Hello everyone, this is Turin here with another Warhammer Total War online commentary. In this particular battle, I'm going to be piloting the Dwarves, led by, I believe, Ungrim Ironfist. So the Slayer King himself has decided to make an appearance, and will hopefully put on a clinic for you guys. So as far as my army composition goes, I have a front line of Grudge Throwers. Again, I like the Grudge Throwers. They have decent range. I think it's higher than the Cannon alternative, anti-infantry, and a little bit cheaper. So it allows you to squeeze in that extra group of Longbeards when you're in a pinch, and again, I just like them all around. As far as my front line goes, I have Longbeards, so I have 4 groups of Longbeards here, and I have a group of Quarrelers, Thunderers, and then also 1 group of Longbeards here. In my typical formation, I like to have 2 extra groups of Longbeards, but again, I pushed it to the limit so I could get an extra group of Slayers, because I'm just a Slayer addict, and even if they're not ideal, they're just so cool, and they're mobile, and it gives you a lot of flexibility as the Dwarves. I have a Thane here with both of his potions. I have a Runesmith with all of the upgrades because, again, the missile resistance, the buffs, the leadership, the attack, all of that is just so cost effective. I absolutely think that every single Dwarf army should have a Runesmith, always. And again, Ungrim with the Axe of Dargo, so he's ready to crack some skulls. He's pumped, and we're about to get down to business. As far as my opponent's army composition goes, he has a group of Reiksguard over here, so pretty decent cavalry, anti-infantry, very, very high armor, actually, at 120, so definitely a tough unit to crack, but I'm a big fan of Reiksguard. As far as the siege goes, he does have a Hellblaster volley gun, so again, one of my opinions, I personally think that you should just go with, the traditional artillery, because the range on these is so poor. It has 230, and by the time it's in position, it's already going to have taken damage from my siege units, and, at the end of the day, I think the range is just too much of an issue on those. He does have swordsmen here, so a front line of swordsmen. They are shielded, which is good against the dwarven missile fire. Just a decent front line all around. He has great swords back here, more great swords, as well as another group of great swords. So ideally, in an ideal world, he'll engage with these swordsmen and then follow up with these great swords once the initial shock has been delivered. And then he also, it looks like he has a 4th group of those. And mixed in there, he has an Empire Captain who is rocking a single potion, not the double potion. And right here, he has a General of the Empire. Again, in this current meta, the Beastman meta, that's the way to go. You got to have those double potions. It is just too cost effective to pass up. And then on the western wing, he has another group of Reiksguard. So his army is essentially flanked by 2 groups of Reiksguard, which is definitely tough to handle as the Dwarves. But thankfully, I think these Slayers will be up to the task. They're pretty quick for Dwarves, and again, they do have anti-large, which does apply to cavalry, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments below, but I believe they do. So they usually do pretty well. Without further ado, let's get started. So I'm getting that initial fire off with these Grudge Throwers, and again, like I was telling you guys, his artillery has to move up, so just look at the value my siege units are generating already. Granted, it hasn't done a ton of damage, but it's already pressuring him and forcing him to move forward, and that alone is a very valuable thing, especially as the Dwarves. If you are weaker in regards to artillery with the Dwarves, it's kind of annoying because then you have to push out of position, and it's definitely not a fun position to be in. So the Grudge Throwers, again, are shooting and they're missing, but that is okay. At least they are firing and trying their best. So I see that he has his Reiksguard coming around my flank, so I reposition my Slayers here, and then I keep a group of Slayers right about here, because I figure that I do have this terrain that kind of protects me right here, so if he comes in here, I can quickly move there, or quickly move to my the southern end of my cannons to defend, so it's not going bad. So I do see that he was coming with his Empire Captain. I'm not sure if he was going to try and harass or do a feign, so I immediately have my Thunders start to take some pot shots at him, and they do get a little bit of damage. The more damage I can do to it and the closer I can get it to having to use potions, the better. So Ungrim got a little overzealous with his bro over here, and they decided to charge, but I eventually told them they had to come back, so they're on their way back. Now, these Grudge Throwers are starting to make a little bit of contact. You can see that this Greatsword group has taken a few losses. This one has taken maybe 1, so not the best game for the Grudge Throwers, but generally they will wear down at least one group pretty well. And they'll keep firing throughout the game, and there we go. See, that was a nice hit, and that's all it really takes to make them really cost effective. He's now in range also of my Quarrelers, who are beginning to tee off on these Swordsmen, and hopefully they'll be able to rack up a few kills before the day is over. So this group of Thunderers, I was shooting over there, but I refocused them and begin to shoot at his front line, and these Swordsmen are starting to take some hits, but luckily for my opponent, they are shielded, so it could be a much worse situation, and those Grudge Throwers are continuing to generate value. Definitely a big fan of those. So he has positioned one group of Reiksguard over here, and he also has one here. So it's very clear that he's planning a rear flank. He really wanted to get rid of these Grudge Throwers, and I pulled my support away from here because, again, he really put all his cards on the table in this back arc here. In our front line here, he's going to engage with these swordsmen, but, they're very beat up. So I feel like my dwarves are going to do a pretty good job. And again, longbeards are superior infantry in my opinion to swordsmen. And you can see this group, having taken damage already, is very, very shaken up. So I immediately noticed that he didn't have anything here, so I pull a group of longbeards to cover this area, and I send this group of slayers back here. I'm like, why not? He had a big opening, he didn't cover it, so I went ahead and sent the slayers off to deal with that Hellblaster volley gun before it can start doing some serious damage. I have my runesmith mixed with my front line, and you can see that little outline of a circle. That's his sphere of influence, where he is giving all these troops a multitude of buffs. Ungram, of course, he's found a home in the front line, and he's cracking some skulls with the Axe of Dargo, and you can see things are going very well for me in that front line. That's one thing about dwarves. You don't always have to bring like hammers or heavy-duty infantry to crack the front line. If you have a Thane and you also have Ungram, he can kind of cover you on that front. So I did pull this Thane over here. I saw the Reiksguard were coming in, so I intercepted them with the Thane, and he'll be able to handle all of these guys, especially since he has 2 potions. So again, a very good use. And I turned that group of Quarrelers to shoot fire over here. So eventually that works out pretty well. My opponent does make a good play and lands his General of the Empire. Does knock away that Grudge Thrower. It was unfortunate for me. Not much I could do, but thankfully this other Reiksguard group, they came in and flanked over here. But these Slayers, they're pretty, if you keep it your perimeter pretty tight, they can usually get where you need them to go to help out as needed. I did see he was causing some havoc back here, so Ungram, he couldn't let his bros go down. So he comes back to help out, and he's going to seriously do some big-time damage. He is a superior combatant pretty much in every respect to the General of the Empire, though the General does have healing potions. So that's one thing to take into account. Thankfully for me, my Grudge Throwers are still firing. So again, I didn't want to fire into my own ranks here, so I just started targeting routing units so that they would continue to rout and wouldn't come back. So that's something that they're pretty useful for. So I did chase off those Reiksguard. I was very happy about that. So I pulled the Slayers up and around. That's something that they're very good for, and I'm going to get a nice rear charge on these troops here in a moment. Unfortunately, he does get his Reiksguard back in and does get a nice little flank here, but Ungram and my Thane are very close by, and again, Quarrelers are not pushovers. They're pretty strong in terms of melee combat, but I mean, obviously Reiksguard are far superior, but you know, they'll hold their own long enough. And these Thunderers here are shooting right into the face of these cavalry and doing a very good job. And I did cast the Rune of Wrath and Rune. I really wanted to crunch them, and just look how fast they go down with that Thunderer fire. And my Slayers over here in the front line did get a nice surround. So these Greatswords, you know, again, they're going to do well against Slayers, but Slayers are still very strong. Even if Slayers aren't fighting like large units, if you look at their combat stats, they have really high weapon strength, they have high melee attack, really high, and of course they're unbreakable, so they will fight tooth and nail to the death and are just such a cool unit. So I resecured my back line. That Thane came and those Thunderers supporting those Quarrelers. That's one nice thing. If you stagger your ranged units a little bit and don't keep them clumped up, when one group gets engaged on, you can fire on their attackers with the others. So that's usually a pretty good strategy. Over here, these Longbeards are still fighting this captain of this Empire captain, but of course he's going to win out in the long term. And he did use a potion. I believe he only has the one left at the time. So he does come back here with this Empire captain. He is causing some pretty good havoc in my back line. I was definitely having some trouble. And this other group of Slayers I was using to chase off some units here, but I eventually pulled them back in to get a rear charge here. So these guys, you can look at their morale. It's now 41, and as soon as those Slayers hit, it starts to drop into the 30s and the high 20s, and they'll be able to crunch these Greatswords down and just do a great job with that. So I was very happy there. And, you know, I'm not worried about the rear charge from these guys on my Slayers because they don't really care. Their morale is always going to be good. Wasn't a concern there. So as you can see, the Grudge Throwers are continuing to fire on the ranged units as they retreat. That's something very good to do. If there's no range targets for them, just shoot at the routing units. They won't come back. And again, in a close battle like this, they can make a difference if they come back. These Thunderers are just kind of rotating and shooting at good targets here. And I was trying to target them on this Empire Captain, but they were slightly obstructed. But regardless, these Quarrelers are, you know, they're steady. They're holding their own against this guy. And the Thane is now engaged with the Empire Captain, and he's in good health. He just used a potion. This Empire Captain did use a potion as well, so it'll be a pretty even battle there. So I definitely was not bummed. I pulled these Quarrelers off, so then I can actually start shooting at this guy. And in the front line, things went pretty well for me. He just has this Empire Captain left. These Longbeards as well as the Slayers will do very good against the mounted units. So eventually I do crack the front line, and the battle is pretty much over at that point. So it was definitely a very pitched battle. Things went pretty well for me, I would say. And those Slayers did a great job at defending my flanks. He came in with his Reiksguard, and the Slayers just plugged in, pushed them back with the support of my ranged units, and all went to plan. So as far as the army breakdown goes, Ungram, of course, was cracking skulls in that front line. The Thane did pretty well. He was focused mainly on fighting the opponent's leadership, so he didn't rack up a ton of kills. Longbeards, they held their own. And again, there wasn't really any missile fire, so the shields didn't play a huge part. But again, they have high melee defense and did quite well. So, and of course, I can't say enough about Slayers. I mean, they pushed back and destroyed this Hellblaster volley gun, which did get some kills, but they were able to shut that down. So, for example, if the Slayers hadn't gotten back there and taken out the Hellblaster volley gun, he could have easily continued to bombard me for the rest of the battle and might have won, because you can see a lot of my units ended very low, and that Hellblaster volley gun does serious damage if you leave it online. So, great value from those Slayers. They found an opening and they went for it. As far as my range units go, they did very good. So the Reiksguard would come in, let's say, for example, they would engage on the Quarrelers, then the Thunderers would support them, the Slayers would collapse, and it was kind of a very good system there. As far as my opponent's army goes, his Greatswords did really good. They were obviously a very good matchup for them against Longbeards, but the Longbeards are still quite resilient, especially with the support of the Slayer King and the Thane. So really good game to double tap Taco. Look forward to seeing you again on Ladder, and thank you guys for watching. Really appreciate the support. Please like and subscribe, and more content coming soon. Take care, guys.